Hey, we're Attention Trading, a full-service digital marketing agency that helps small and mid-sized businesses with their strategic marketing efforts. From websites, design, social media, and ads, our goal is to create marketing alignment for our clients. You may not realize it, but the majority of businesses lack a solid marketing strategy and plan. That's where we come in. On this show, we talk with business owners, founders, and marketers to uncover the secrets of their success when it comes to starting and scaling a business. This is the Attention Trading Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast, where we talk with CEOs, owners, founders, and marketers about how they grow, scale, and operate their business. My name is Max Lowy. I'm with my co-founder of Attention Trading, Steve Alves. Today's guest is one of our favorite people of all time, and I'm not just saying that because she's sitting right next to us, but I'm really excited to introduce everyone to Celeste Kathleen, or as I like to call her, CK all day. CK is an extraordinary poet whose work has resonated with over 2 million viewers on TikTok. Her poetry collection, The Floor of a Bathroom, delves into the raw and honest themes of childhood trauma, mental health, substance abuse, and domestic violence. CK's work not only names these feelings and their impacts, but also navigates the challenging journey of healing and finding oneself. Through her own story of coming of age without a support system, she candidly explores the pressures young women face to conform and fix themselves. Her brutally honest poetry starts real conversations about mental health, providing a voice to the unspoken. We are so excited to have you here, CK. Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I've missed you guys. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a minute. It has been a minute. So that kind of intro, again, you have a lot going on. We have worked together for a few years now. We know you well. Our listeners probably don't know you that well. So we're really excited to get everyone to know CK. So I'd love to kick this off with a question, just basically your background, who you are, what you're doing, what you're up to, and kind of how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I have like two parallel lines of background running against each other at all times. And one is kind of how we know each other, which is I work in marketing. I'm an event marketing director. I do that as my full-time job and I love it. And I feel like that is primarily how people experience me day to day, is being a little silly, being a little creative. And I can speak more about how I ended up there. And then the book line, which I think is kind of primarily what we're going to talk about, is I have been writing forever, kind of as I've been pursuing my career and, going to school and making kind of progress in that realm. It has always been just present for me since grade school, since before grade school. I always process my feelings and things that are going on around me through poetry. And then a few years ago, I stumbled upon a flyer at a coffee shop that I was working at during the day for a poetry open mic. I decided to go, and then from that decided to start posting them on TikTok. It went pretty viral, the first couple ones that I posted, and has sort of taken off since then and led to a book being published last fall. And that's kind of the short version of it. And I feel like poetry, if you are not a poetry fan, I might lose some people right away, has a little bit of a reputation for, being a little boring or a little like academic-y, or just people have assumptions about it. I like to say, to give me a chance in that regard, I think I write a little bit more musically, a little more rhythmically. I try to have a style that is a little bit more in that realm, and also just speaking on topics that I wasn't hearing people make art about enough, or when I did hear it, I wanted to add my own spin on it.
That's awesome. I think that was a nice way to give your background there. And all right, so here's my question. And actually, this was a question from Jocelyn, my wife, who is a very big fan of the book. So it was interesting. It was interesting. So we want to know the vulnerability of writing, really, especially your style, your feelings, not only in your poetry, but also like the content creation. So like you basically went from creating, no videos, posting no videos online, to posting videos, being super vulnerable, telling your feelings, your emotions, totally, putting it all out there, and now having millions of views, likes, comments from a marketing standpoint, like that engagement is amazing. So
Yeah.
like what was that thing that made you, I guess, take that step to go and make that first post or go and do that open mic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like, because the years that I've spent writing and sharing it to no one far outweigh the years that I've been doing this, right? And the first open mic was sort of just like I was writing more, I was doing more poetry, and like you see videos of other people doing it online, right? And you kind of just have this like, I think I could do that. Like I kind of want to try that. Um, and to me, I feel like people maybe think it's the opposite, but an open mic is far scarier than posting something on the internet. And I didn't do well like the first time I went, but I did well enough to kind of, or like it went well enough. The work was received well enough for me to be like, okay, maybe I want to try this again. But it took me a year, like between the first open mic and posting the first video was over a year actually. Um, and so going and kind of getting that like practice in person to be like, okay, this one didn't go so well, but like maybe I can get a little better at this. And then finally getting to like the open mic that I went to before I posted for the first time, like I did really well. And I was like, okay, maybe I am kind of good at this. And maybe like this is something that I can put out there. And if it can be received well by an audience in person, then I feel like I have the evidence that I need to try it online. I feel like it's kind of how, people like think about marketing stuff in general. It's like if I can say this idea in a room and people receive it well, then maybe it's something that will work on, this digital campaign or whatever. And it was a similar thought process.
So
So what's the hesitation between, because you just said that doing it in a room full of strangers is far scarier than doing it online where there's way more strangers, right? So what's the hesitation to do it online versus in public?
I think it lives and dies in the open mic room, right? So like if it's really well,
It's
it
true.
lives and dies in there. If it's really bad, it lives and dies in there. But if it's online, like, you know, people write things down. And I'm fairly lucky like to be on a pretty nice corner of the internet. People are not really coming to like poetry talk to, you know, be mean,
Yeah.
but people do like write observations, right? Or they share their own stories, or they like if they think you look like somebody, they're going to tell you. And so it's just like the commentary that happens in a room, I think, is much more like no one's really going to say anything to you unless it's about the poetry or about the art or about their own art, whatever it is. And so that kind of getting it honed in that isolation, although scarier to be up in front of people in public, I think validates it before I go online. And I'll
so
still do that. Like I'll do like pieces that I have not posted online at open mics before I would ever post them.
so and I just want to make sure I heard this right. So you did an open mic and a year went by before you posted online?
Yeah, I did my first one in like
It's interesting.
February 2022, and then I didn't go to any open mics. I was like, I did not think I did well. I mean, I have a video of it. I didn't do well. Like, I forgot the words. I was nervous. Like, and it was new because I'm not a nervous public speaker at all, but I was about this. And I then decided to go back to open mics maybe like 8 or 9 months later. And then a few months into that, I decided to post online.
Okay. And so now if we're looking at like the posting online aspect of this all, so the majority of the engagement has come through TikTok, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By far. Like, that's pretty much all of it. Yeah.
So as far as platform goes, because at the end of the day, you are a content creator, right? You're creating content
I guess so. Yeah.
on social, but you're also an artist creating content through your book and your poems. And so platform wise, are you doing any kind of cross promotion or is it strictly TikTok? Are you seeing any kind of followership or viewership that crosses over through the different platforms, or like what are you seeing?
Yeah, I will say I identify much more with being an artist than a content creator, even though my like day job self would hate that and is like, you should do more for this. It just stops being fun if I start thinking about it like too marketing lensy, and I just can't, right? Like I can't make it feel too clinical or too like job like. And so I tried to focus more on like the art first and what I like about it and just whatever comes out of that do, and a little consciously, even though it's like frustrating for myself because I'm like, oh, you could be doing this so much better. That being said, I do post on TikTok and Instagram, and I've tried YouTube Shorts before as well. TikTok by far, just the way that I think, and I think a lot of artists feel this way, the way the algorithm works really lends itself to art being heard and hitting the right people and stopping. I do get people that come over from TikTok to my Instagram. Not a lot, probably like a few a month will come and find me on Instagram, and that's really nice. I do feel like I have like more of a connection with those people, and I'll get DMs from those people. I don't do a lot of like specific cross promotion because I don't really have a need to. Like, if I am reaching them on TikTok, that is where I will like convert the most folks. TikTok has a lot of good analytics. I know it's like good practice too, but I'm happy with like the TikTok being the primary platform for the poetry.
So let me ask that kind of parallels that. If you had the choice to quit your job, not to say you would because you absolutely love what you do,
Yeah.
and do poetry full time, do you think you wouldn't be able to do that because you see this as something as a fun aspect, and if you made it too businessy, it would become less fun?
Well, I will say off the bat that I would never want to, because like when I talked about those two parallel lines, like I also feel like those are two really big parts of my personality, and like what I love in my full-time job is being silly and creative and using that part of my brain. And I think poetry is creative, but it's not silly, and that's like a huge part of who I am. So I would have a really difficult time doing it full time. It's too. I like that it's serious, and I like that I can put serious emotions
It's
there,
too
and I
much
think it serves.
serious.
Yeah, it serves a really good purpose in my life, and it creates really good conversations because you have to have that stuff sometimes. But I just cannot have that stuff all the time, and that would be super important to me. And I know there are some artists who have kind of figured out how to like have make serious art. Like, I don't you Steve, Noah Khan, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I feel like he does such a good job. Like, he has like really serious songs that touch on stuff, but he is also kind of like a silly goose online. I have not figured out how to do that effectively. So maybe if I could ever do that, it would be great. But if it like in terms of if it would be hard to do because it would be work, probably, yeah. I cannot be creative on demand. I'm sure there's people, or sure there are people that can. For me, it's kind of like when the thread pops up, I have to follow it. And I'm very lucky that it pops up often enough to write a book and have a TikTok channel, but I can't be like from 8 to 10, you have to be creative. So I think I would struggle in that regard. Maybe not. Maybe I'm
So
wrong, but
so not to keep going deeper into the subject matter specifically, because I think about like a lot of the stuff you do, right, as you say, is moody and it's deep and some of it's very dark. Given how your life is now,
yeah.
and how you like being silly, and and how you were saying being a silly goose and such, you find it harder to pull from that area because your life isn't
Oh, totally.
that dark anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, for context, like a lot of stuff I write about, I would say is from like childhood to like 24, and I'm turning 30 this year, so definitely. And my life is super, I live a very normal happy existence now. I did not always, and so that I write about just relationships, or childhood trauma, and like figuring out your parents issues, and really, and how you manifest that in relationships, and the mental health stuff that comes up. And so a lot of things that were really huge themes in my life. I have yet to run out of writing about that, if I'm being honest. Like, it just I never feels like I'm at the end of that rope, and maybe one day it will. Um, I also have I did this with like two poems specifically that ended up in the book, but I've started doing it more, which is, say something, an event happened that really matters to you when you were 17. Like, there's a way in which you experience it at 17, but then there's a way in which you think about it at 21, and there's a way in which you think about it at 25 and 29, and those are all very different from each other. And so I do a lot of that, where like it is kind of looking at something and reprocessing it over and over again. And I don't even know that sometimes people would know they're about the same thing or not. But I think once you have some material, you kind of have a lifelong bucket of material. For me, at least that's how I feel now.
So that makes a lot of sense, and it's it's funny that you positioned it that way, because we talk a lot about, when we are talking about the content creation and where people are posting, how they're posting, and we're always saying repurpose, right? And that's basically what you're doing. You're repurposing something in a fresh new perspective because of where you are in your life. And I think it's a very different way to repurpose content like that we typically talk about. One thing that I wanted to ask is, someone who's constantly connecting with audiences, is there any specific strategies that you find most effective? So like, and I know we just kind of went through like art versus content, right? And it is separate for you. But I think it's also like that marketer is also there, like during when you're I mean, like, you are a marketer at heart as well. So like, you know what is going to connect with your audience. Are you creating art based off of that data now, or those insights, or is it straight up, hey, I'm just like, are you able to separate that and really just go art and hope that people you're following is connecting already?
Yes. Hi, Kitty.
I'm sorry.
No.
He barged in and absolutely
He
has to be on
has
the
some
podcast.
questions, and I'm here. Yeah. So, okay, I think I can answer this in two ways. The first one being like, I would not say that in the same way that I would for my job that I like actively strategize, but I do try to like be observant and see, like, because TikTok, even though I've been really lucky in terms of, having a good handful go viral. I think I'm somewhere around like 6,000 followers now over the course of a year. Like, I've been really lucky in that regard. Not every video does well, right? Like most, and I think this is the case, unless you're one of those content creators that's in the like millions of followers. Most videos just do fine. Some do bad, and like a handful do really well, right? And so that's kind of like the algorithm that we're all working with. And I do try to take a lot of like notes or observe on like, okay, what was true about these ones that do really well. And for example, I think I have like 5 or 6 that would technically be considered like viral, right? And of those 5 or 6, there are totally common themes in them. And I think things that do really well that I'll try to take note of, for example, underproduced. As annoying as it is for somebody who has invested in good camera and mic equipment, I have never had a video using good camera and mic equipment that has gone viral. In fact, half of the ones have just used like my shitty iPhone microphone, which is crazy to me because I think it sounds so fucking shitty. Sorry, but I think it sounds.
You can
swear
curse
here.
it.
It's fine.
I think it sounds horrendous. That does, but I don't know if that's like coincidence, but underproduced seems to be a really common theme. For me, having them memorized, you would think it wouldn't matter because you're recording and you can just have it off screen, but any of the ones that I have memorized just like tend to have that cadence a little bit better. That always, I think every single one of them that has gone to my viral has been one that I am not reading off of anything. It is fully memorized. And I've tried to replicate it with like a teleprompter or whatever. It just does not work. Whatever it is about my cadence that changes or is like a little different delivery wise lands better.
Yeah, well, you said it's your style it has a beat, right? It has that music
Totally. Yeah.
sense. You could tell, and I don't want to say you could tell the ones that are memorized and not, but like the ones that do go viral, like they have that beat, they have that flow to it. So you're spot on there.
Yeah, and so that's something that is, I guess, annoying for me as somebody who does it like, as a hobby. It's like a lot of work to memorize them, but I guess it pays off. So I'm trying to do that a little more. And then the other thing is, I think that has probably informed how I like think about the art now as I'm writing new things, is things that get to the point faster. So when the first few lines are very clear about what the poem theme is, that always helps, which I think makes sense as a marketing principle. It's not always how people choose to like write, and oftentimes writing is like a slow build to the point, but I think if you can do both, some of the ones that I have that have gone viral, like, name immediately what we're talking about. We're talking about mental health drugs. We're talking about somebody getting sober, and that's like in the first few lines, and so that helps a lot too.
So that kind of feels like, I think Max and I are saying the exact same thing.
We might, yeah.
You go first.
I was gonna say
let's see all in at the same time.
Ready, go. No, I was gonna say it's what you just described it's very much like a playbook for, especially for social, right? The hook,
Totally,
right?
yeah.
So the hook, the stupid thumbs up. So that the hook, the authenticity, the realness, right? Like everything that you just mentioned, like the underproduced, like no one wants to be sold to. So like everything you just mentioned for what you've seen success is what we are always pushing, because that is typically what people are, what works and what resonates with people. So it's really interesting that that you've been able to understand, see those insights, and continue to try to do more of that style, because obviously as an artist and as someone who has a book that wants to sell more copies and get your message out to the world, like you want more people to see it. And how do you do that? You got to be a little strategic in how you message and position it.
Yeah, totally. And I think like there are a million of those like 10 things you have to do if you want to go viral, like, be authentic, or, don't use this or whatever. And I would say like try stuff and see which ones fit, because I think there are some that I have found that aren't the case, right? Like I actually do better if I don't post every day. I think it really depends on what you are, because don't people really want to interact with poetry that makes them think about their feelings, not 3 times a day, and you get really like you start to oversaturate people, and I will get less engagement. So I found more like once a week to twice a week to be a really good sweet spot for me. Sometimes if I feel like I am like getting plugged a little in the algorithm, or like not enough, I'll like take a few weeks off and then come back to it. And people don't go anywhere, if you're gonna get pushed, like you can restart that up. There was another one I was gonna say that I can't remember, but that was a big one. I lost it. It'll come back to me. But there's some things that are not great too.
Let me expand upon Max's point, because ours was similar, but mine was like 2 degrees different.
Okay.
So when you create content, right, and there's definitely this need to appease an algorithm, but at some point, like it has to be more about community than it is about the algorithm itself.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you appease the community, then the algorithm should in turn then turn up for you, right? At the same time. But my question is if you're as a creator are trying to appease the algorithm more, and you start alienating your community, does that affect your content? Because as a a poet, like you don't want to just try to like manipulate your poetry to essentially fit some algorithmic happy spot.
Totally. And I won't. The only thing that I will say is it might inform the ones that I post, but I definitely like won't write just for that. Like there are tons in my book that I have, maybe not tons, but like half of the ones in my book I've never put on TikTok. One, because I think it's fun for people to like find ones that they've never seen before. And then two, like they're just not gonna work. And I know that. And so it's more about like selecting the ones that I know will work, as opposed to like adapting the work to make it work on TikTok. And I think sometimes, like, I will say the thing that kind of falls in between that is sometimes I'll get to the end of the piece and I'll be like, there could be a line at the front end that like says more clearly what this is about. There are sometimes where I've done that for TikTok, but then maybe it wouldn't be in the final like written piece, right? Because I think it's unnecessary. But as long as like I'm like somewhere in the middle of like I want to do it for the art, but like I'm not an asshole. Like it doesn't have to be like for the like sake of the art or whatever. Like if it makes
Purity,
it more,
right?
Yeah, like if it makes it more approachable and accessible, awesome. Like if more people are going to see it and it's going to resonate with them, awesome. The other thing oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was going to touch upon something you had said in your kind of your parallel with Noah Khan, right? Like one of his really good songs. I think it was which song? Oh, anyways, there was one song that he had done, but he had sourced it on TikTok, which made him really big.
Yeah, was it Stick Season? That was like
I think it was, right. Like he was like, "Hey, I'm going to release this thing in COVID," and all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, I'm going to make this a full-fledged song," and became huge. For you, I believe I've seen you kind of try to do that same thing, right? Where you try to like open source up some poems.
Yeah, I'm being honest. Both in my day job and in any hobbies I have, I am just somebody like. I have real bad ADHD. I am bored all the time. And so I'm like looking for things to like be a little bit stimulating to me. And so I will get that
friends.
Way. I'm aware of it. And but it's kind of how it was born, is like I was writing and people were responding really well. And I think I have a really great community, especially of folks who will like kind of be repeat watchers and commenters and followers. And I wanted to engage with them more. Like I didn't just want to be like, here's some new stuff. Like here's some new stuff. Even though they're really nice about that, I wanted it to be a little more collaborative. And so I haven't done it in a little bit now. I should do another one, but all of the time, and I think any writer, honestly, any creative of any kind, marketer could relate to this. Like you're jotting down things in your notes app that are like ideas. Side note, I have one from the other day, and I don't know what I meant at all. I've been staring at it all week. But those yo-yos are still $20. What does that mean? Why did I write that down?
I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you can't tell.
Like, was that a poem or was that a like shopping list? I don't know. But anyway, my notes app is like really chaotic from from this stuff. And so I would take a few lines that were not.
I'm gonna tweet that right now. Like yo-yos are still $20, and just leave it in the universe and see what happens.
I love the
go viral.
it's like, were they $20 before? Are they even? I don't have any recollection of this, but I will take ones that are like. I also I'm usually dead sober when I'm writing these things. I just am an insomniac, so I'll roll over in the middle of the night and be like, let me write this down. And then I come back to them later and really forget. But I will take ones that are not that and are a little bit better, and like maybe 2 or 3 lines that I have not yet written into a poem. And I'll take 4-ish of those, and I'll put them up on a TikTok and be like, hey, which one of these should I finish? Like, which theme should I follow through? And so people will pick one, and then I'll do it. And then it was super fun because one that I ended up doing out of that ended up being one that is my most recent one to go fairly viral. So that's fun. People feel a little more involved and a little more invested. Yeah.
So you are, I guess, atmosphere-wise, when you write, is there somewhere specific that you like to write? You just said, you're completely sober when you are writing. I know personally, I like to have a glass.
I thought I was sober.
Oh, for that last one. Okay. Because I was going to say, I like to,
I didn't say that.
When I do write, I like to have a glass of wine. I think just things flow a lot better for me. I know you might, go to Wegmans and have a glass of wine.
I've never done that.
Right. But where do you like to write?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will write sober. It's not a process where it's one or the other, but I definitely like to take a walk. I am, on that ADHD realm, not a sit still person. And anytime I've tried to do something creative where I have to force myself to sit still, it just does not work. And so I take my phone and my notes app and go for a walk. Are we always 100% sober on all of those occasions? No. And sometimes I think there is, it's the Ernest Hemingway quote that's the right drunk, edit sober. I'm not usually drunk, but I think there is a cool thing that can benefit creatively to responsibly, thinking about it from a different brain space or perspective. And I think you can be a little bit bolder when you are maybe not totally grounded in that way. But that's just my experience.
Turning off the logic altogether, because because as a partial pseudo creative sometimes in the space, and I don't drink alcohol, nor do other things, so I know the block of logic is always there. It's this looks like shit because logically it makes no sense. So I can imagine some sort of inebriation will help to kind of lubricate those wheels.
Yeah, and
that's the smartest sentence I've ever said, by the way.
That was so good. That should be the quote.
That clip right there is what we're gonna promote this with. Yeah, this episode.
Still $20. No, that's how I feel, and I'm more of a a little edible, a little something like that type of person, and a lot of poets are, right? If you look historically, through a lot of the poetry movements throughout time, that is where you'll find a lot of them operating from. And I think it's exactly what you're saying. And something that I will say a lot that I feel like people never believe me on is that I am not good at feeling my feelings. I am quite terrible at feeling my feelings. And for reasons you were saying, Steve, is I constantly have either this logical thing or a little bit let's just joke about it. Let's be a little silly about it. And to actually sit and feel things enough to write down not only how they make me feel, but we're processing them and then we're making them into this art piece. I have to disarm a lot of things that are going on in my brain for that to happen. And so like I said, I do it's not a practice where I have to be this way. I've done a lot of them, I've gotten to the point where I can, but I think it can definitely help when you're feeling a little blocked on something, in the same way that people will meditate or take mental health drugs or whatever it is to just sort of get in a more grounded place to process emotions. I think there are lots of ways that people go about that.
I can see really good parallels between exercising that muscle, right, of trying to be more vulnerable and being in the marketing realm at the exact same time. Because in marketing, you have to take risks. To be different and to stand out, you have to take risks. Do you see that parallel between the writing the poetry and your daily job?
Totally, yeah. And I think it's why I like bopping between them so much, kind of depending on what brain space I want to operate from. I feel with the poetry, and this is actually something going back to noticing things that have worked, you also sort of have to be saying something true or saying something honest. If you are doing something that is a little frilly, it doesn't really matter what level of production you have or how often you're posting or whatever. Like, it has to be true. And I've noticed that too. If I write, I don't really have a metaphorical style. I have a way more direct style, but the ones that are
You're a
metaphorical,
sledgehammer of poetry.
yeah, for real. Oops. But like the ones that are more metaphorical do worse. Or like the one, or like too metaphorical, right? Or too cryptic. And I think like I've noticed totally in my day job as well. Like, I think doing both of these at the same time has made me just more willing to like be creative out loud and like try the ideas and see what works. I think TikTok is a great practice if anybody wants to do that in general. Like, you just sort of rip the band-aid off of like, well, that didn't work, or that one, a million people saw, but I guess never again. Like, you just sort of like get used to iterating and trying a little better.
Yeah. So that it's funny because we're saying that about the podcast actually, like a lot. Like we're still working out all these kinks that we're having. Anyways, what one thing that's interesting with like that statement and you personally is like, again, I've had the opportunity to work with you a bunch. You're extremely talented. You're also a little bit of a perfectionist. And I saw this, I saw one of your posts a while ago on LinkedIn, and it was more about like the production of the book and how there's certain things, there might be a typo, there might be a bleed that's off, or there, like coming from like that part of your brain where you like to control certain things to make sure that it's the way that you want it, right? And especially since it's like your art to put it out there, you want it to be the best version it possibly can. How have you been able to deal with not controlling some of that stuff and it's still out there in the world?
I haven't. No, it's so funny you say that because whenever I do anything like this, I always make sure I have the book next to me just in case. I don't know if you can see this, but I had to grab two because I am not in control of the manufacturing of this book, right? Amazon is, and they print on demand and they fuck up my cover all the time. And so like this one, you can see like they just didn't carry the lines all the way through. And so I had to like grab a different one to make sure I had a better, I don't know if you can see it very well, but stuff like that happens all the time. It drives me insane and I can do nothing.
Here, hold on. I have the hardback copy.
Sometimes there's ones that just have no background at all.
Oh no, this one has the back. I can't see it right there. That's
amazing.
Good, yeah. Always accessible when I need a moment.
Exactly. So there's little stuff like that all the time. There is something that TikTok has started doing that I don't know if anyone else experiences. I've been like reading on Reddit about it, but if I record something on a nicer microphone and lay it over, it'll be like perfectly synced on my editor, and then I upload it to TikTok and it will like unsync it and it looks crazy. And I just can do nothing about it no matter what. There's, just all kinds of creative things that if I had the ability to make different, I would. And like, sometimes the answer would take a million years. Sometimes there is no answer at all. And you kind of just have to keep going. I will say that it has helped me be far less critical of other people. I think that like not like outwardly judgmental, but you see people like if I saw a video where somebody's like audio is not synced, I'd be like, oh my God, like, they should have synced that before they posted. Or like, just like things, I have a little bit more creative grace for other people. And I am like I think it's made me less anal and less of a perfectionist about that stuff, which I think is probably good overall.
That makes sense.
The way I see this is if I was to buy a book that didn't have the bleed all the way to the edge, I'd be like, oh my God, I have a one of one. Like, yeah, this is worth so much more. You want to know what's
so funny? No one's ever said anything to me. I've said things to Amazon, but nobody has ever said a single thing to me.
It's such a good, honestly, this is such a good point. We tell clients this all the time because when they think about content and they're putting out content and they don't put it out because they overthink it. And I always say, no one cares. Like if no one saw it, then no one saw it. If you got 2 likes, that means no one saw it. So it doesn't really matter to a certain degree. Yeah. And which is hard to, as a marketer.
No, it's super hard.
It is really hard, but it's such a valid point.
I think especially like if stuff is in the art realm, even stuff that I do for work though, because I do a little bit of TikTok stuff for work as well. Like I just go for accurate and honest. And if those things are true, then whatever else is happening around it, I'm going to do my best to make polished, but I'm not going to like get hung up on it being polished.
Yeah.
Accurate and honest.
Yeah. There's only so many.
Make them do a t-shirt.
Okay.
So I have a question being Maxter and I are going to keep doing this the whole time.
I know.
I have a question around being a creative again, and it might just be relative to like just general professionalism itself. Imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
a thing for you?
totally. Less now. When I started, for sure. I think like whatever your thing is, whether you are like an artist or a musician or a business, starting a business or whatever, like you are constantly seeing and probably inspired by like other people that you've seen do the thing that you want to do really well. And I think there is always this element of like, okay, I'm gonna put mine out there, but it's not as good as their thing, or like, okay, like one day people are gonna be like, this actually isn't that good, or like whatever it is. And so yes, but then I think the more that I've done it, and the more folks it's connected with, you kind of get that data of like, okay, well, even if the next thing I do is not maybe the best thing, like I have evidence that I can do this thing and connect with these people in this way. And so I think that helps get rid of it. I don't feel it for poetry at all anymore. I feel like I am a poet. I deserve to be in that space. Like, I want to do more with it. I'm working on audio versions of stuff now. I like feel good about it.
Yeah.
Love that.
So,
So you're just saying the only way to solve imposter syndrome is to do the thing until it's gone.
Yeah. I think you just need evidence, like in anything, right? Similar to like when you get a degree or get a job, like you need evidence that you like can do the thing and are capable of the thing. And once you have that evidence, like, just like all your day-to-day tasks, right? Like once you can do it, you're not worried about if you deserve to do it or not.
here's a question. It kind of goes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier, where in person kind of I don't know. Are they performances? Are they considered performances?
No, shoot.
Am I frozen?
Oh,
You
yeah.
were.
Oh, well, here's my question. So, are they the in person open mics versus the online? Um, I see a lot of comments, positive comments online. Obviously, I haven't been to a live show yet, unfortunately. But I know I'm the worst. But has there been anything super significant, either from the live show or from followers, some kind of comment that has like really hit you, like something that's super memorable, super significant, like anything at all?
Yeah, a couple. I feel like, so for the online ones, this isn't necessarily a specific one, but something that will happen that always stands out to me is like when people start telling their own stories in the comment section, that like whatever it is that I wrote about, the relationship, the mental health, it resonated with them so much that they want to share like what has happened in their lives, and it's like sparked this. Or the other one that I'll get online is people that like people will DM me a lot, like poems that they wrote, like they were inspired to write based on that thing. Those two things always stick out to me. I think being able to say that, an art that I put out there inspired somebody else to write something and process their feelings is like the coolest thing in the world. And then there was this one that happened at an open mic that was a man came up to me. He was at the one that I had done previously, and he then came to this one, and he had bought my book at the first one, and he showed me this picture, and he's like, these are the two books that have impacted me the most in my life, and it was my book on like a little display, and then I don't know if you guys are familiar with the author John Krakauer. He wrote Into the Wild, and he's like pretty well known, so I feel like people would know him. Into the Wild, Into Thin Air. He's like an investigative journalist, and he is my favorite author of all time. Like I love him. I have a poster of one of his books in my living room, and so that was very cool to be like, we're very different authors, like not in the same realm at all, but very cool for somebody to just randomly has no idea about that about me to have like my book and my favorite author's book on display and like equate them was
It's wild.
The coolest feeling. Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Okay, and then so how about the book? Like, how has book sales been? I mean,
Yeah.
I know early on I was pushing it to my following a little bit. I mean, obviously I hope I was like one of the first to buy. I don't know what number I was, but how's it been going?
I don't know, and I can't see that information, so I can never tell you. But I'm sure you were. It's going well. I mean, like steady, right? Like for a self-published book, which I am, it has, more than 20x'd the typical self-published book sales, like, which I think is like 15 or something like that. Like a regular self-published book barely sells anything. We're definitely in the mid hundreds of books sold, which is very cool for being out less than a year. And I have two different experiences. So if I have a TikTok, we'll always sell some a month. Anywhere, like some months is one a day, some months is a couple a day, some months is a couple a week. It just really depends on how my videos are doing. And then in person, whatever I bring, I will sell out of. So that's a really cool experience. I definitely will have, and it's something that I'm kind of thinking about on a marketing realm now, is like, I know when I get out in front of people and people like stop, that it lands and it works. So just kind of exploring how to have more of those opportunities. So I have a couple shows this month, trying to sprinkle those in more, and then making more time for TikTok. It's interesting because I want to use the poems that are in the book to sell the book, but I've also saturated those a lot, right? So I'm working on a new project that is an audio version, where I'm adding some that are not in the book, but it is, a handful that are, so I can use some newer stuff to promote too, because people don't want to hear, people love Stick Season, but Stick Season has already sold a bunch of stuff, so you gotta keep creating new things.
Yeah.
So with that, we like to always ask this question to every guest. And I think this comes out of, and I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts, is that this comes out of like my general interest of having gone through my career and asking other people who either above me or parallel to me, of like, hey, how did you get here? Like, I think everybody who is anybody, they don't ever dream about being where they are now when they're like 12. And given that your whole poetry is about that really young age group, do you think that soon to be 30-year-old CK would be where she is now doing what she's doing and in 2024?
Yes, I did. I think that is.
You're the first one.
That surprises
I planned all of this.
No, for real. Like, it surprises me that people don't answer that way, because to me, like, the idea of this being the truth is kind of the only thing that like keeps you going, right? Like, if I thought like it was going to be as like shitty as I wrote about it in my book forever, like I wouldn't ever have gotten to the place where I can write a book. Like, you have to like somewhat believe that you're going to be in a place where you are reflecting on those things, not living in those things. And I think if I had not had at least an ounce of that, like, I think there were times where it ebbed and flowed, right? It wasn't like I was a primary optimist by any means, but I think you have to have at least a little bit of that inside of you, that you believe that you can get to that place. And I think the vision of that is sort of always where I saw, right? I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write things. I think it's what kept me observant about the things that were going on in my life and like able to process them enough to write about them later. So, yes.
That's so awesome.
Love that. Love that you just stumped him on that question too.
I think it's more that I'll have to watch some of the other ones to see, but I do think some things happen by surprise, but I don't think things like this happen by surprise. I don't think you accidentally write a book of poems.
What I will say too is, like you kind of started this off, this is a hobby, right? Like, and you don't want it to be a full-time.
Yeah,
you want to be able to continue to write and express yourself, but it is a hobby. So like, I guess to that point, Steve, this is probably the first person that we've asked that question where it's less professional, it's more hobby-ish. So it does make sense. I mean, from day one, I've known that you were a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was necessarily poems, but I knew that you were a really good writer. And so that's interesting. Is there another, I guess like my last question would be, is there another book in the works? I know you have some audio stuff happening, but what is next?
Yeah, totally. I guess there are kind of three things that I would say are next. The audio being the first one. I'm not doing an audiobook, I'm doing an album, because talk about imposter syndrome. Here's my goal. Are you ready? So last year, the Grammys released a new category, which is spoken word poetry album. It was the first time it's ever in its own category. Before that, they could be considered, but they were in the same category as like audio books. So they were losing out to like Obama's memoir, stuff like that. Now they're their own category for the first time. And I just think it would just be fun to try, and I think my stuff is more musical than it is book-like. So we're going to do an album and be a little delusional, and like maybe it can reach a lot of people. And then I am going to release another book. I have to decide. I've just had a lot of stuff that I did not include in the book or that I kind of wrote since then that I think still goes along with the themes. So I've thought about doing like an extended or like just putting them all together and doing a little re-release of that. And then I also want to write things that are not poetry. I do write a lot of things that are not poetry, and I got to write my like great American novel, So that's kind of my big three.
Love it.
So when you actually produce the audio aspect of it, where are you trying to place it? Are we talking about Apple Music? Are we talking about
all that Spotify,
everywhere?
Apple Music, yeah. And what do you guys say? Like anywhere you can listen to podcasts like that. Yeah.
We're just gonna have a podcast of just that. We're gonna release that your spoken poetry as a podcast.
Yeah, perfect. No, yeah, it'll be a Spotify thing, and it's interesting. It's like it's challenged me creatively a lot. Because even though I write my stuff to be heard, there's just so much that goes into like making a recording like both perfect but also capture the emotion. And talking about perfectionism, I am letting really, really consciously in the process of letting go some of my perfectionism for this project, and figuring out what's important to care about and what's not. And yeah, we're working on it. I've had some cool help. I am really lucky. I went to NC State for undergrad, and the folks who run their libraries over there they also have a bookstore and have Chris and Madison. They're amazing. They have my book in their bookstore. They're letting me use some of the studio space there, so that's been really cool. But that will be hopefully by the end of the summer. I have something in that realm.
Very, very cool. All right, so last, where can people find you? Where do you want them to look?
Yeah, well, if you happen to be local to Raleigh, North Carolina, I do lots of live shows around here. And then if you are not, or you want to see when I'm doing those, I post about them Instagram and TikTok. I am CK.Poet. And that is the best place to find me. You can find links to my book. You can find my website, all that stuff, CK.Poet.
Love it. Well, we will make sure that we add that link to your book at the show notes here. I want to give a huge thank you to you for sharing your journey, some insights, the raw, the honest, just the background. I love your story. I love where you have gotten. And you're just, like I said in the beginning, you're one of my favorite people. So if we can help highlight you as a person and your art, I hope that's what this episode did. Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to us for all things marketing at attentiontrading.com.